This is great. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Lots of great folks in the chat there. Thank you for joining. I see somebody waving. That would be who? I can't see that person anymore. Sam, thank you for your wave. Welcome all. Thank you for joining us for this PI19 community meeting. It's very exciting to see all of you there in the chat. And just so that we know who you are, feel free to go into the chat area, say a quick hello, tell us where you're connecting from. We typically tend to have a very varied audience in terms of time zone and where people are connecting from. So it would be good to see where you all are connecting from. So just pop into the chat, say a quick hello, let us know where you're connecting from. And as you do that, I will read some of the responses. Hey, Ibrahim from Sudan, welcome. Excellent, that's great to see you. Thank you for joining us. Jane from Johannesburg. Good morning, Miller. Miller, it's probably like what, 2 a.m. your time? Thank you for connecting from Seattle. Me is in New York, Rajesh is in Canada, welcome. Yes, Omar, thank you for joining us from Australia. Matt is in Seattle, thank you for waking up early this morning. Amit, thank you for joining us from Germany. Great. We've got William from Myanmar, Godfrey from SA. We've got somebody from the UK Midlands. Jason, excellent. Pedro from Lisbon, one of my favorite cities in the entire world. And Sam is in Hyderabad, India. Thank you so much for joining. It's great to see you all and to have you all here. Brian, thank you for joining us from Texas. It's one of those time zones that completely throws me off sometimes. Excellent. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you all for joining us from wherever it is you're joining us from. It's one of the most exciting times of the year, second to Christmas, when we come together and share updates and give, just have a good sense of, get a sense of the community that we are and what we've been up to over the last PI, over the last 13 weeks in PI 18. And so we've got an excellent agenda lined up for you for the next couple of days. So for those of you who may not be familiar with this community or how we run this program, this event is a fully virtual meeting, which means we're all hanging out here on Zoom. We do have the Mojaloop Slack, and if you go to the Mojaloop Slack, there is a channel specifically for PI19. Those of you already in that channel just got a little notification. So if you're not aware, we will put the link in the chat for you to join Zoom, to join the Slack. So any conversations, any questions around any topics or presentations you hear on this platform or throughout the next 3 days, please feel free to pop into Slack. A lot of the community members are there. Feel free to post your questions, either during a session or after a session, or even before a session. I'm sure the speakers will be happy to respond to those therein. You're also welcome to use the chat. I see most of you already know how to use the chat, so thank you for joining in there. I will be looking through the chat and alerting any speakers of any conversations or any questions that are posted there. So do feel free to make use of that. This morning, unfortunately, we do not have Paula. She's out sick, but she does send you regards. And she hopes that we have an excellent convening. So keep in your thoughts and prayers. This morning, we will start our session with a couple of updates from the foundation and the community. We've got pretty much everyone on staff today. We've got Nick Drury, we've got Paul Macon, Steve Haley, and Isaac Achenja with us this morning. So the next hour and a bit, we will get to hear a couple of updates. But before then, I'd like to, if Miller, if you're awake enough and have a cup of coffee, if you'd like to just come off mute and give everybody a quick welcome.
So thanks, Ian.
Yeah.
I am at least awake. I said that I would rise, but I refuse to shine at this hour. Well, greetings, everyone. Obviously, we are virtual again this time, but it was nice to see everyone in Arusha, and we're looking forward to seeing you again in Zanzibar. And I know that Simeon's got a packed agenda for us. I won't take long here. I do think that we have some good momentum forming, though, with the adoptions of Mojaloop. I'm thinking now of course, of Tanzania, who were the first to adopt, Rwanda, and we have some new ones that are coming in. But of course, our friends from Myanmar here as well. And really, the focus seems to be shifting at this point to adoption and acceleration of those deployments. So I'm really interested to hear how things go this week. We're getting to a point where I think we're nearly ready with another release forming of the infrastructure as code to simplify deployments of the software. And of course, we've got some progress that will be reported out on the design for the vNext architecture and for the infamous Tiger Beetle. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. That's, I mean, a pretty full agenda. I know we only have 3 days, but I think it's a largely technical program this time. And with that, let's get started. I'll hand it back to you, Simeon. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Miller. And again, thank you for being up this early to welcome us. So there are two things I'd like to highlight just before I pass it to Nick, the director of the Mojaloop Cbdc Center of Excellence. In the last convening, there are a couple of things were introduced, and these themes we'd like to keep going. One of them is, as you've heard Miller say, is we're actively trying to get the voices of adopters in the convening, and that's something that hopefully we'll be able to continue seeing here. But also, as things evolve and as the focus has been on increasing traction with adoption development, that has affected certain aspects of our development work, our organization as a community. So we hope to hear updates on that this morning as well. But to kick things off, just before I pass it to Nick, I also want you to be aware of some housekeeping. In the last virtual convening, we had during the breaks our trivia, the Mojaloop trivia, and the current Mojaloop trivia champion is Mr. Sam Kumari. This convening, Sam, you have an opportunity to defend your title one more time. And so during the breaks, don't be too quickly to go and don't head off too quickly to rush and get your coffee. We've baked in enough time during our breaks for you all to be able to participate in the trivia session. Feel free to dethrone Sam, challenge to everyone. I'm sure that will be a fun time together. So to kick things off, I will pass it over to Mr. Nick Jury. Nick, ready?
Thank you very much indeed, Simeon, and welcome everyone, wherever you are calling in from. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening if you're in Southeast Asia, where I'm calling in from, in Singapore to be specific. I'm delighted to join you on this occasion, particularly as the director for the Centre of Excellence for Central Bank Digital Currencies, having been recently launched on the 20th of June. And I think this marks a significant milestone in Mojaloop's promise to advance financial inclusion in emerging markets. The new COE will help accelerate the broader adoption of cross-border payment platforms, and we're hoping it essentially benefit many more populations of entire emerging markets. For those of you who may not be so familiar, Singapore is very much in the middle of a very interesting association of countries which are very varied in size, from Indonesia, which is about the same size as the US in terms of population, to other countries, 9 or 10 or so in the ASEAN region, over 660 million people to date, and awful lot of opportunities here to be able to progress financial inclusion, to improve the provision of digital and other financial services. And as the data shows, we only have around 40% of the Asian populations which actually have access to financial services. So we have quite a long way to go yet before we can really talk about universal financial inclusion, specifically in the Asia Pacific region. But I'm absolutely delighted and really excited to be with you today, and particularly in my capacity as the director for the Centre of Excellence, because this space is really so important. And as many of you are probably aware already, there's well over 80% now of central banks around the world which are actively looking at central bank digital currencies as a way to improve quality and provision of payment services. And so this issue, as with many others in financial services, is with us to stay. And the question, as always, is how do we design the system or systems, how do we implement those systems, and then how do we operate those systems in such a way that it benefits everyone, not just a small sector of the economy or of the population. So I'm really excited to be with you today. How are we going to do it? So the Centre of Excellence is a collaborative body, and as mentioned, we'll be looking at ways in which CBDCs have the potential to make a wider spectrum of Mojaloop's capabilities available to central banks and to their citizens, merchants, and other digital financial institutions. So we'll be extending Mojaloop's ecosystem engagement in the region, so that the Centre of Excellence itself can collaborate with regional organisations focused around developing these open and inclusive digital payment systems. Singapore has a fairly long track record of innovative capability, and it's with the regulator stroke central bank here, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, that we have really been able to kickstart this particular initiative. And again, because it's a global hub for cross-border payments innovation, but also through the linkages of those 10 member countries of ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, as well as also the African countries outside the region, that we're really hoping to be able to make tangible progress over the next few weeks and months and into the future. So we aim to align with the G20 goals to address the frictions in global cross-border payments, and having this Centre of Excellence based out of Singapore will really enable us, to drive this engagement and collaboration both within Singapore, but also across the ASEAN region more effectively. And also to investigate across the region how to really remove those restrictive hurdles and high fees that have been barriers to financial inclusion historically. Just a word about what we are doing right at the moment, sort of in tangible terms. So we are currently building up the terms of reference and the members for the working groups that we're planning to have as an integral part of the Centre of Excellence. One will focus, not surprisingly, on the technological aspects of the development of CBDCs. There is likely also to be another working group which will focus more on the non-technical, the strategic foci around CBDCs. And in any case, we will be having these working groups probably every couple of weeks, or at least a month, we will see how that goes with the members of the two groups as we develop outwards. In terms of the sort of potential collaborative projects that we have in mind, and again, bear in mind that this also will need to be agreed and to go through the usual governance processes to do with Mojaloop. But essentially, some of our key priority collaborative projects are likely to include the following. Firstly, domestic clearing with settlement in CBDCs. So that will be access to domestic payment systems, and that being limited to entities that have access to settlement facilities with central bank. And that project will probably test the use of Mojaloop as a central clearing system with settlement via external CBDCs. Domestic issuance and clearing of CBDCs, again extending Mojaloop as a system of record for issuance of an account-based wholesale CBDC. We'll be looking at various pilots, cross-border payments pilots. This will involve multiple intermediaries, and we'll test the use of CBDCs in pilots involving pairs of emerging economies. And we can assume, and this will assume the use of Mojaloop core as part of the pilot itself. We will also focus a lot on financial inclusion workshops and hackathons. The unbanked communities run the risk of being excluded from the digital economy as we gravitate towards digital payments. And there is, as you can imagine from the data that I shared with you earlier, there's a very high level of cash floating around the economies in this part of the world. So the hackathon will invite participation to examine how universal access digital currency issued by a non-profit entity, for example, or a government body could integrate the unbanked communities in a more seamless way. There will also be, hackathons around problem statements, considerations around policy, supervisory controls in thematic areas, for example, like KYC, AML, CFT, and so on. And then last but not least, Cbdc Toolkit. So we'll be hoping to develop a set of resources that will serve as a starting point for launching CBDC initiatives. And some of the potential resources that have been identified would be development of reference architecture, sample code, policy considerations for issuing a CBDC, and then also identifying standard interfaces, data models for integrating with traditional payment rails and Mojaloop itself. So there will be plenty of other things happening along the way. This is really just a taster, just as an opener. My role will really be to drive the Centre of Excellence forwards and to listen very carefully to all partners, all players within the ecosystem, and to ensure that we can make tangible progress towards our final goal, which is of course universal financial inclusion. But very excited to be with you today. Welcome your inputs, welcome your participation, and very much look forward to your support, because it's not just here in Asia that we want to be collaborating around CBDCs. There's an awful lot of work going on elsewhere in the world, particularly in Africa and other regions. And it's the collaboration, between public and private sector that really makes the difference. So I want to encourage all of you, wherever you're based, whether you're in Asia or not, you're all welcome to join this conversation and to help us, drive financial inclusion forwards for the greater good, for the good of everyone. I'll stop there, Simin, and pass back to you. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. Just for those who may not be aware, we have a wholesale CBDC channel on Slack. I just posted that in the meeting. Feel free to join that. That's where you can find Nick and participate virtually in the Mojaloop CBDC Center of Excellence activities. So feel free to join in there. I will pass it now to Steve Haley to give us updates on deployments and partnerships and and all things market development. Steve.
All right. Thanks, Simeon. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Perfect. All right. Let me go ahead and my screen. Perfect. Okay, and first thing I'd like to do is ask Desire to go ahead, and we're going to talk about the market development partnerships team, which includes Desire. So if she can go ahead and show her face and wave to everybody, please.
Hi, everyone.
How'd it go? Thanks, Desire. So I think a lot of you know Desire, and I'll be going through what some more updates are, what we're working on these days. But for a lot of these things, you're going to need to reach out to her to talk to her about it, because yeah, she does a lot more than me on this. All right, so I'm going to go through a couple of things today. I'm going to go through where our deployments are right now, some of the main ones that we're focused on in the community. I know there are a number of things happening out there that we're not privy to, we're not able to talk about because this is a commercial thing. A lot of you will have commercial work that you're doing that you don't want to share, and that's totally fine. Then I'm going to go through some things that we work on that are the challenges of that we face with our deployments. And I think, like Miller said, the main focus that we have right now is on deployments. And I've had this conversation with a large number of you over the past couple of years of what are some of these challenges that we have in deployments, and we really want to tackle them. And so this is why I want to discuss this. And then some of the solutions that we're going to be working on during this PI towards that. So I know that the vast majority of you are much more focused on the technology, and on the product. Some of this touches into the product, so I want you to pay attention of how those of us who are focused on the deployments and the market development feel like we need to improve on the product. So hopefully that can give you some focus. But also a lot of you understand the product better than anyone. And so I would like to ask for your contributions in terms of how do we think and talk about the product. And then I'd also like to ask for your recommendations of who we should be bringing into the community from the business side. We've been talking about this for years. Leslie Ann talked about this and did a lot of work towards it. We really want to focus on it in the next PI of bringing on more of the business-minded folks that work on deployments. And I see Mike is there, so he is one. And we'd like to get more people like that out into the community. And so that's what the purpose of this is, more of a call to action for bringing in more members of the community who would care to help us with these things. With that, I'm going to go quickly through the deployments. Most of you already know about TIPS, the Tanzania Instant Payment System. I've seen a few people from the Tanzanian market in the audience today, so that's great. We don't need to talk too much about it, but we do know that the closed users group testing is happening. Most of you know that the next convening is going to be in Zanzibar. We're going to hope to demonstrate some of the progress that's been made. So stay tuned for that and book your flights to Zanzibar because it's exciting. You actually have to see it live. We've got the Myanmar Microfinance Digitization Project, which is under the scheme of WinePay. And we talked about this a lot with our partner FitsaWorks, who is now the hub operator, which was a Myanmar system integrator, now regional system integrator, that's really taken on the mantle for Mojaloop in the region. The exciting news on this project is that recently FitsaWorks was awarded some assistance from MAS to look at the cross-border use case together with Visa for both Myanmar and Philippines. So that's going to help us actually start talking about Mojaloop in the Philippines, and that's building off of a project that Visa and Modusbox had done last year. So very exciting news for that system, for that deployment, is the move into cross-border. We've got the Rwanda National Digital Payment System, and we're actually not going to call it 2.0. There's only one system, but also very exciting that the Rwanda government has decided to go ahead and move forward with Mojaloop. And so very excited that African Under folks are in the room today because we're excited to partner with them on this journey that we'll be seeing over the next couple of years with Rwanda. And that ties into, I think, the next thing I'd like to talk about with our strategy, which again, I'm going to be asking for some of your help on, is a key country focus. So the problem, not the platform, the problem is we have limited resources and we have a really big world. There are only so many places that we can go to. And so one of the solutions we're looking at and hoping to develop is identifying key hub countries in each region that become a launch point for that region. And we'll focus the SI Mojaloop capacity, and the SIs already have capacity, focus their capacity around Mojaloop in those specific hubs to then expand into the geography. And Rwanda is a great example of where we're seeing that, where I think we've got something like 4 Rwandan SIs registered for this convening today, which is incredibly exciting and shows what happens when a country says, hey, we're interested in this technology. The private sector follows. And so that's where we want to really focus those the work of those SIs into the product work streams to make sure that they're contributing. So we haven't defined this regional strategy yet, but I would say that several key hub countries are beginning to emerge. Like I said, Rwanda with a large number of SIs and the government commitment, Jordan with JOPAC's involvement in the Product Council, and Singapore with what Nick just talked about at the Cbdc Center of Excellence, along with FitSurWorks work in Singapore and the region. So I think those 3 are turning into quite nice hubs, but that strategy still needs to be developed. All right. Some other key partnerships that we're working on, again, we've got to look at how these things are going to scale to us. And so some key ones that we're working on. First is the Microsoft Azure project. A lot of you are very aware of this. Microsoft has successfully deployed Mojaloop into Azure using the native Azure platform to reduce the operational cost and complexity. Now, they've replaced some of the open source components with some Microsoft native components in order to optimize, which is awesome. And it's actually currently available in the Azure marketplace for one-click deployment. So anyone who is looking to play around with Mojaloop, highly recommend you give that a try. Please come back to us and give us your feedback and thoughts. We'd love to know how it went for you. But that is available in the Azure marketplace. Great news. And any other cloud providers who happen to be listening, please catch up. Another one we're looking at is payment leaders. In particular, Visa is looking at how value-added services can be added to other real-time payment networks built on Mojaloop, including cross-border fraud, risk, and analytics. And so they, like I've mentioned before, they did a proof of concept with Mojaloop in the Philippines and are now working on a proof of concept with FitSurWorks in Myanmar, Philippines, and Singapore, with an aim to go live on that within the next few months. So incredibly exciting work with Visa. So it's 2 of the main partnerships that we are working on and look forward to continuing that partnership. And anyone who wants to join with that, just talk to Desire and myself. And if there's questions, I can't see them. So Desire, you can just kick in and let me know if I need to answer something. Okay. Some other countries of interest. I mean, these aren't things we control as a foundation, but things that we are hearing about are happening. Is that some UN agencies in Afghanistan are looking at how Mojaloop might work together, particularly on G2P payments. I've mentioned the Philippines. There's several rural bank leaders are also looking at how they can not only tie into the BSP's open finance framework, but also giving rural banks access to InstaPay. In Indonesia, Mercy Corps and XLayer are looking to replicate what FitSurWorks and Modusbox have done in Myanmar. In Yemen, there's a number of there's a local implementer looking to connect 4 mobile money operators. The Gambia has a series of stakeholders doing assessments of Mojaloop. And in Uganda, we have Haipipo, who's leading an effort to bring together the private sector. So those are just some of the ones that we know about where countries have leaders taking forward Mojaloop. If you're interested in those countries, please reach out. And if you know of others, please let us know. We're happy to highlight them. All right, this is the main piece of it I want to go through is some of the deployment and go-to-market challenges. Again, a lot of you who've been pushing this, talking about Mojaloop, understand these challenges. First of all, is to realize it's not just a Mojaloop issue. I talked at the last convening about digital public goods and digital public infrastructure. All of these challenges are similar for all open source digital public infrastructure. And just know that the Mojaloop Foundation, we are actually kind of leading that effort together with several organizations. So some of the main ones I want to talk about is the procurement process, the clarity on the process for developing a project, lack of successful implementations, and the product readiness and clarity. And I'll run through these relatively quickly. Most of it doesn't apply to you, but if it's of interest, please do reach out. So the procurement, very often it's not actually controlled by the central bank or the hub operator, who are our main clients. And it can be a risky thing for a bureaucrat or for a government employee or a donor agency to try to go outside of their standard processes. And the way the procurement structured, it tends to favor a turnkey solution with a traditional vendor. And so what we really have to do is tackle that problem. We have to go after understanding how to influence the procurement process at the very early stages to make sure that the procurement is structured to enable the central bank or the hub operator to select Mojaloop as an option. Clarity on process. And I think that's also one of the main challenges is a lot of people know, okay, I would like to use Mojaloop, but now what? How do I do that? We don't have a playbook that lists it out. A lot of it we've invented as we've gone along. There's the level 1 guide that helps defining a process for a scheme. And there's a lot of work around defining the process for a scheme, but very little that says, how do you actually build the switch using Mojaloop, and how do you build the scheme using Mojaloop? And there's also no pricing estimates. It's one of the first questions that they come, it's, okay, cool, but how much does it cost, more or less? Until we have enough deployments, we're not going to be able to answer that question, but we need to get that out there because that's the first question that is often asked. We have no public success cases. That is of little news to anyone, but it exacerbates all of our other challenges, particularly the skepticism about open source. So we just have to focus on getting those success stories out there. Product readiness and clarity. There's a lot of market confusion about what Mojaloop is, and I'll talk about that. Deployment complications. Luckily for that, we have a real emphasis from Paul and Product Council on the infrastructure workstream, so appreciate that. Integration challenges and support for Payment Manager. That has been an ongoing challenge, is doing the actual integrations with some of the deployments. And I think Payment Manager and hopefully Payment Hub are ways towards that, but we need to make improvements in it. And that's something where I hope we can get contributors and partners to come in, is helping us improve Payment Manager. We have no marketplace for practice implementers. We have the business website, but we need more people who've actually done it. And again, that's why we want to focus on specific key countries to get SIs in those countries really focused and capable of being practiced implementers. And a lot of the features are not market tested before acceptance. And a lot of you will have heard me talk about this lately as well, is that's why we're really focusing on getting hub operators front and center, because before a feature comes out, I'd really like to get it into one of our deployments and make sure it's actually what the hub operators can use. I'm going to skip over bright spots because I think I've been talking for quite a while, and I want to talk about some solutions. But we have had some really great bright spots, lessons, and learnings from Rwanda and Myanmar. We just need more deployments so that we can take those learnings from. So some of the solutions that we'll be working on, and again, this is where I'm going to ask you all as the community to come and really contribute and reach out to me if you want to contribute to this. Reach out to me if you know somebody who would like to contribute to these things. The first thing we want to do is build a playbook for implementers. And I'm going to talk about that one more in a minute. We want to hone our messaging around what Mojaloop is. Also going to talk about that. Expand and refine the Mojaloop training program. And so if anyone sees, a lot of you are going through the Mojaloop training program, please give us feedback. We really want to see what's useful and what's not useful. Where have we talked too long and where have we not talked enough? And give us ideas for what other courses should be implemented. We want to get the next 3 deployments funded and moving. And we want to advocate for new procurement processes that are going to let's say, give a preference for open source in their processes. And lastly, we want to increase pre-sales team members. And those are two types is what we're looking at right now. So again, this applies to most of you in the community. If you are an implementer and you have a sales team, we want to help them go out and be successful salespeople of your Mojaloop products and services. And so we want to be working with your sales team and your pre-sales team. We also want to be working with the payment system consultants that are often the ones advising hub operators and central banks about what kind of technology they're going to use. And so that's going to be an emphasis, is really increasing that cadre of pre-sales teams that can be talking about Mojaloop out there. So the first one I'll talk about is the playbook, and that's going to be the focus for us for this PI, is looking how to, basically it's an expansion of what Paul Macon's already done on the adopter toolkit to really help people decide, plan, and execute using Mojaloop on a payment system. I won't go through the whole list, but here are some of the components of it that we would expect it to have, including, again, a roadmap of building RTP, scheme and switch, not just the scheme. The product and business documents, technical specifications, and a lot of these things we often say, well, here's the code, you can go look it up. That doesn't work when you're trying to make a decision. People want to see a document that is very clear, concise. This is what Mojaloop is. And including also how to use the Mojaloop training program, how to fit it into your program, how to build an ecosystem engagement and partnership plan, like how to bring in your national system integrators and developers and fintechs into your real-time payments build. Even things down to developing TORs to help with the procurement of when do you bring in contractors and what are they supposed to be doing. We want to make it so that it's the simplest choice, not the most complicated choice, which it currently is, to do a Mojaloop deployment and procurement. And a lot of these things, though, have been done for WinePay. A lot of the work is things that Africa Nunda's really focused on right now. So what we're hoping is that we can bring together work that's already been done by members of the community, and then bring in new members of the community to help us refine it. The last thing is on honing the messaging that I want to talk about. And this has been a really big problem of clarity about what Mojaloop is and what its value proposition is. I think most of us have heard 20-minute speeches about how great Mojaloop is and what it does, but what we really have struggled with is being very specific and focused on exactly what it is. And so we're trying to hone that messaging so that those of you who are out there in the market have better messaging you can take to potential adopters. So this is where we are right now. I would love everyone's feedback. Please send it to me. But some of the key things that we are focusing on for value proposition is the local ownership and optionality, meaning the ability to change things in the future, the lower costs for low value transactions, the focus on low value transactions, the lower cost and risk for different classes of DFSPs to transact, and the third-party payment initiation, being the four key areas that we want to focus on for our messaging. Now, we do that through two things. We do that through the open source nature of Mojaloop, but we also do it through some key design decisions that we've made. And so those, I'm not going to go through all of them, but those are the four main areas where we think that both those two things, the open source nature and the design decisions, contribute to those four value propositions. Again, we know that we've missed some things out. However, being complete is sometimes not the best way to communicate to people who have to make tough decisions quickly. And so we have to be is accurate, but maybe not 100% complete, because that's just not possible to do in the first view. So again, this is main focus is making sure we all can agree on our key messages and key value proposition. I'd love everyone's feedback on it. And with that, I'm open up to any questions.
Just a reminder for everyone, you can post questions either in chat or in Slack. Awesome. I don't see any questions. So, Steve, I'll take it from here and then we can
Okay.
move on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. I'm here if you have any questions.